just a man with a man's courage. No, nothing but a man. You can never fail. No one with the pure heart find it
It's been a bit of a long road in some cases getting university approval for me to come and speak, and I'm always left wondering why. What it is that is so threatening to the progressive left on American campuses about a gay man with the wrong opinions. And I've come to the conclusion that the quality of debate on the progressive left, as exemplified in academic departments up and down the country, in the pages of Vox, and Gawker, and BuzzFeed, and Mike, and all those other despicable places, has reached such intellectual lows that the only way that the left now has to interrogate arguments is on the basis of the identity of the speaker. And because, although I'm a gay man and I like dick, I don't necessarily want the federal government to take 75% of my earnings, even though, you know, gay people are supposed to believe in all of those things, that the left just doesn't really know how to argue with me. Doesn't really understand how to deal with somebody that they can't call a misogynist or a sexist or a transphobe or a racist or any of the other names that they will call all of you if you have the wrong opinions about things. They can't really do it with me and get away with it. It doesn't stick because I'm, you know, a preposterous gay man with ridiculous hair who never shuts up about black penises. They seem... You read my Twitter, you know. They seem unable to interrogate arguments and to look at facts, and instead they sort of run shrieking into safe spaces anytime a speaker appears on campus who doesn't agree with their point of view. I've come to the decision, though, that it's not necessarily the students that are the problem, although they are, of course, whining babies. It's the faculty. It is your professors. It is institutions that permit this behaviour. The campus radicals in the 60s and 70s were, to their credit, great believers in free speech. They were wrong about everything, but they, to their credit, believed that people should be allowed to be offensive and people should be allowed to challenge the establishment. Their children and their children's children, the social justice warriors of the modern campus, have forgotten this. They've forgotten something interesting. They've forgotten that free speech, but more specifically offensive speech, serves two purposes. One, it keeps us safe. In those countries where people are allowed to offend the ruling classes, and in America that means the liberals who run academia, the newspapers, and university, and the entertainment industry. In countries where you're allowed to be rude about those people, we don't shoot each other over politics. In those countries in the world where you're not allowed to be rude about the ruling establishment, people do shoot each other. But there's another more ironic failure in the left's new hostility to free speech, and it's universally hostile to free speech, whether it's the Black Lives Matter movement or feminists, they're all the same. They don't want to hear it, they want to shriek, they want to yell, they want to shout you down, they want safe spaces, trigger warnings, all this nonsense. And so they've forgotten that free speech, and specifically offensive speech, the right to say things that people above you don't want to hear in a manner in which might offend them, is an engine of progress, but an engine specifically of progressive progress. It is what gave us gay rights and gay marriage. It is what gave women the vote. It is what brought about an end to slavery in this country. And the left has forgotten, it seems, that what got them there in the first place was the right not just to say what you want, but the right to offend people while you do it. Now I'm going to keep my remarks very brief because I'm being escorted off campus at 8:30 because I'm too dangerous to be allowed to be here for too long. I'm not even allowed to stay on the on-campus hotel. I have been moved to somewhere near the penitentiary, which actually I was fine with. They could have saved the hotel, but they could have just dropped me off at the front door. I would have been fine. It's always been a life ambition of mine to fuck someone on death row. It's about as hard as it gets. We have a Supermax on your doorstep. It's very exciting. I've actually extended my stay by 3 days. I'm not leaving till Monday. I'm going to get straight to the Q&A because having a conversation, as I say, we're short on time because I am a threat to student safety because I am a gay man with opinions, so sorry about that. But I want to say just two things before we get into having a conversation, and you can ask me whatever you want about whatever you want, if I think you already have, and we'll get through the questions. The first thing is, it's really important that you remember, as consumers, as customers of this educational establishment, what you're not getting for your money. And this isn't just specific to this university, it's specific to most of them, actually. And I was at Rutgers where people smeared themselves with red paint and yelled, "This man preaches hatred." And, you know, the students are just idiots, right? These are just dumb kids who don't know anything. But it made me wonder, what are these kids learning in class? What are they not being exposed to? Well, they're not being exposed to any point of view that challenges their prejudices, and I use the word prejudices advisedly. The problem is with the staff, with the teachers, with the faculty, who are so politically homogenous that they don't even know alternative points of view, let alone want to expose you to them. And the second thing I'll leave you with is just a recapitulation, really, of the importance of offensive speech. I don't really want to come here and start and talk endlessly about myself as much as I enjoy talking about myself. It is my favourite subject, as anyone who follows me on Twitter will tell you. But the way that my tour is panning out, this dangerous faggot tour, it's a good name, right? Is that actually the story of the tour is of what's happening on those tour stops, whether it's protests at Rutgers, whether it's Minnesota air horns. They went to the discount store in Minnesota, and they kind of came with air horns, except some of them didn't work. So this guy sort of leapt up very enthusiastically, and his air horn went. He sort of looked at it sadly before being hauled out by the police. So he brought it up to me to sign later, and I just wrote, "In the end, I'll always be louder, darling." What I want to remind you of, the purpose of, the most interesting thing about this tour has been the tour itself, not necessarily the subject matter of any of these discussions, because I've realised just how infantilizing these institutions have become, and just how allergic to alternative points of view the progressive left now is. Anyone who asks for a trigger warning or a safe space should be immediately expelled, not rewarded by the institution at which they're studying with resources. Rutgers, a week after my talk, the university staged a group therapy session for people who weren't at my talk, but were so appalled and so threatened and so violated by the idea that I might, not agree with the tactics of modern third-wave feminism, that I might not like some feminists, that they had a group therapy session that involved the police, it involved the campus counselling services, it involved numerous members of the faculty, the student council. This stuff is nuts. This stuff is getting in the way of your education, and I would advise you to resist it at all turns. Every time you hear about this stuff, you should use the most powerful, the best weapon in any free speech fundamentalist arsenal, and that is ridicule. These things are worthy of ridicule, they are deserving of ridicule. You're here, the purpose of your time here is to explore new ideas. The purpose of your time here is to challenge yourself. The purpose of your time here is to interrogate new ways of looking at the world. Your professors aren't going to help you do that in many cases, because they don't care about that. They don't believe in free speech, and they are totally politically homogenous. Many of your peers are of the same view, but fortunately you have organizations like the ones who have brought me here today, and for as long as it is still allowed, you'll have speakers like me. So, although we've sort of spoken around me and the topic of free speech and not really got onto any substantive stuff, I'm going to finish there, because I know everybody has questions, and we're going to get into, if you're here because you want to hear stuff about the wage gap, or campus rape culture, or whatever you want, I think it's going to come out during the questioning. So thank you very much for coming, because it is a brave act even to show up to these talks sometimes, because you will get social censure, you will get black books from professors, and I've heard from students here that they already have. Well, I have a message for the faculty, which is tough shit. They may not like conservatives, they may not like free speech activists, they may be fully down the road of crazy, hateful, bigoted, sexist third-wave intersectional feminism. But they're in the minority, they remain in the minority. The students who believe this on campus are in the minority, and the more the public finds out about this stuff, the more they loathe it. Social justice flew wildly out of control in 2015. 2016 is the year we take common sense and we fight back against it. Events like this are the first wave in that. I'm doing 60 talks this year, horrifying pearl clutches all over campuses. Irony being I'm the only one who wears pearls. And this is an important thing for you to show up to. And if you lose friends over this, frankly, they didn't deserve you in the first place. Thank you very much, and let's get on with having a conversation.
Any more questions?
Pass it down up front. Get some.
Hello? Good. First one is, why are you so mean?
Why am I so... I'm lovely. I'm literally the nicest person I know. I don't know whether that says terrible things about my friends, but I'm literally the sweetest person I know. Well, I'm friends with Ben Shapiro, so that makes sense. As I said earlier, it's important not just to say what you believe and to talk about it. Sorry. It's not just important to say about what you believe, but in times when it becomes socially and professionally dangerous to talk about facts, to say, for example, that campus rape culture is a preposterous lie. It is clearly nonsense that women on American campuses are being sexually assaulted at rates comparable to the Congo, where rape is used as a weapon of war. That's obviously nonsense. It doesn't stand up to the slightest bit of common sense. Nor does it stand up to scrutiny when you look into where these studies come from. It's crazy advocacy research. When you live in a world where it's dangerous to say, actually, do you know what? No serious economist takes the wage gap seriously. Women aren't paid differently for the same work as men. You need to revisit the dictionary and learn the difference between wages and earnings. When it becomes dangerous and difficult to say those things, because the media consensus and the academic consensus is so completely all in on these fictions, on these progressive memes that simply aren't true, it becomes difficult to speak out, and people feel very worried about losing friends. People feel worried about losing their jobs in some cases, and I think it takes polemicists, it takes people who are prepared to blow open the fire doors to start those discussions in the first place, to even raise the subject at all. If I'm occasionally mean, it's normally because they deserve it, because you are being lied to. It's very difficult to say this without sounding like some sort of Alex Jones conspiracy theorist. But as somebody who's been worked in the press for many years, you are being lied to knowingly every day by journalists in the press, and in the newspapers and on television. They know they're doing it. They do it anyway. They do it because the primary purpose of journalism has stopped being telling the truth, explaining the world as it really is, and has begun to become virtue signaling to their peers about what nice people they are. And this sort of narrative over fact type of journalism, this description of the world as it ought to be, or description of these scary worlds that don't exist, because they sort of tell an important story even if the facts aren't right. Well, these things damage the very people they're supposed to help. If you look at all of the rape reporting on campuses, for instance, well, every single one that I've ever heard of has turned out to be fake. UVA, Columbia, all of them. They've turned out to be frauds. Now, why does this happen? Because the journalists don't really care about the facts. They're not interested in evidence-based conclusions, in exposing wrongdoing. What they want to do is advertise to their colleagues that, rape is bad. Yeah, well, we know that. But the fact is that these things have been, the rates of these crimes have been plummeting for 30 years. And if liberal journalists are going to try to tell me that the universities run by liberals are hotbeds of racism and sexism, maybe we need a change in the administration. Maybe it would be better if conservatives ran them for a while, because clearly it's not working under liberalism. Now, what can be challenging and confusing about some of this, is that everybody seems to believe this stuff everywhere you look. And there are some very miserable and depressing reasons for that. Intellectual inquiry, the purpose of which is to broaden horizons, not narrow them. It seems to have been thrown out at a lot of universities and in a lot of, particularly in liberal arts colleges and particularly in non-science subjects. And journalists who were never told no at college, never told, that's not what the facts say. Now, these students have graduated and become journalists. They're in their 30s. They're still bitter and angry about it, but they're describing a world that doesn't exist. We live in quite crazy times. We live in times where it's open season. You can say whatever you want about the straight white male of folklore. You can abuse them, you can call them terrible names, you can do awful things, and you won't get censure for this outright sexism. You will get applause. In those circumstances, I think being mean is the least that I could be doing.
You good? Very fast. I just want to say.
Sorry, I just.
The question was, are you mean? And you did treat me to Taco Bell today. That's not very good.
I did. I took you to Taco Bell.
Okay, so next question.
We don't have Taco Bell anymore.
In a previous talk, you stated that rape culture does not exist. Can you define rape culture and give your reasoning behind this statement?
Yeah, the very important thing to remember is, I was at Michigan a few days ago, and I've been talking about rape culture in a debate with a friend of mine, Julie. She's a radical feminist. We agree on nothing. She's a sort of hefty dyke who just comes in and swears, sort of like, patriarchy, I hate all men, you should all be in camps, and whatever. We agree on nothing, but we love each other. We had a very funny debate. We were talking about rape culture, whether there is a culture in America, on American campuses, of encouraging rape. Well, quite clearly there isn't. And what was remarkable to me is when we went out for drinks afterwards, news started to spread among the people in the bar of what the talk had been about. And I was only in the bar for an hour, but on the way out, the coat check girl had somehow heard that I was a rape advocate, that I was in favour of rape. Well, I don't know anybody in favour of rape, and I don't think anybody really is, unless they're, African dictators or whatever. But the way that this sort of becomes confused is precisely what liberals want to do to you when, you say, well, actually, maybe 1 in 3 women have, on campus. That's obviously bollocks. What are you doing? Well, they're doing 2 things. One is they're going out looking for stories that are obviously nonsensical, like Jackie at UVA or Emma Solkowitz or Columbia. 2, they're widening the definition of sexual assault to encompass ordinary human sexuality, to criminalise perfectly respectable, reasonable behaviours, the sort of early fumblings of sexual awakening, and criminalising only ever in one direction, towards the direction of boys. Now, they do this to confuse and muddy the waters between rape and rape culture, and the reason I've given a very long preamble to this is because I want to make it very clear to say you do not believe there is a rape culture which encourages and endorses and enables sexual assault of women, which is a horrific and horrible crime, is not the same thing as saying you don't care about rape. That's just what the left does to make people like me seem evil, and I'm not. What I'm suggesting is that when you lie to women about the danger that they're in, when you encourage them to go on slut walks that suggest that whatever I wear, you can't look at me. Well, you're wearing nipple tassels. Of course, I'm going to look at you. If you go out drunk at 3 a.m. in nipple tassels and a short skirt in a bad bit of town, you're putting yourself in danger. Modern feminism would like to tell young women that that's perfectly fine. You should do that because no man has any right to look at you. Well, rapists very often aren't the nice middle-class boys who went to consent classes with you during your English course. They sometimes look a little different from that. These women are not being adequately prepared for the world by modern feminism. And when I object to what is a myth, campus rape culture, it is a myth. It's based on no evidence whatsoever. It's completely evidence-free. It's a panic, scaremongering. When I object to that, I object to it specifically because it hurts women.
Are you actually just trolling everyone, or nah?
Why would I be trolling everyone? I just talk about facts instead of feelings, What's so remarkable is, when I'm in a debate with somebody and then, we now live in a world where I'm offended or that's hurtful is some kind of, argumentative strategy. Does that mean something? No, it's garbage. It's meaningless. When somebody says that's really offensive, the appropriate response is to double down and tell a worse joke. If somebody says that's really offensive, go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. I don't care. I don't care about it. Safe spaces because these opinions are really hurtful, and I think
they contribute to a negative environment around, shut up, fuck off. What I want to know about is the data. I want evidence-based conclusions about the world as it really is. Not the world as liberals would like it to be, or the fictional hell they paint in order to get their policies through. I don't believe in lying to students. I don't believe in lying to anyone, but too much of journalism has become about that. If telling the truth and talking about studies is counted as trolling these days, then I will wear the badge with pride.
Why do you think college campuses have become so liberal and closed-minded? And why are the administrators giving in to insane demands by students holding campuses hostages?
Well, the first part of that question is historical, and it's to do with, I've alluded briefly in my opening remarks, to campus radicals in the 60s and 70s who, although they were wrong about everything, they were admirably in favour of offensive speech and of standing up to power. These people lost the argument over political correctness in the public square, but they did assume, as Christina Hofstadter likes to say, they assumed all the assistant professorships and got tenure. Now, these people believe in most, now and their children believe in most of the garbage that is taught in women's studies departments, where people graduate dumber than when they went in. You go on a gender studies course, or a women's studies course, or an Afrocentric history course, or most of these courses, you will come out with less knowledge than you had when you went in, you will be less well equipped to deal with the world, and you will be more of a baby. I don't understand why parents are paying $50,000 a year to send their children to university to become infantilized. It's remarkable. Well, I've lost track of the question.
How can you hate lesbians when you're gay yourself?
I don't hate lesbians, I just find them funny. I mean, they are funny. I mean, there's a section of the population that has massive obesity problems, huge domestic violence, they beat the shit out of each other all the time. They're miserable, they're inane, they don't do anything, they never smile, always go on their pleasure cruises, they come at you with knitting needles if you dare to suggest they should maybe put down the second slice. I mean, they're just inherently funny people. I mean, I think being gay is funny. Like, gay men are funny, it is a bit funny, but lesbians are particularly entertaining. I've got many lesbian friends, I make these jokes to them, but, some people, of course, and it's a particular brand of modern lesbianic feminism, the man-hating feminism, the misandry that characterizes modern feminism, the kill white men, I bathe in male tears, all that kind of nasty, nasty stuff that you will see from writers in The Guardian. Respectable publications employ and endorse these sorts of opinions. And it is nothing but veiled misandry. It is man-hating. There is no justification and no truth to this weird thing about, sexism is privilege plus power plus... It's nonsense. It's a cover for women who hate men, and many of those women are lesbians. I find ridiculing a movement which is based on bigotry to be perfectly acceptable.
We're going to go a different way. How do you keep your hair so fabulous?
It's not today because I couldn't get to the salon, that's why I was going to wear the hat. I came straight off the plane today. You have to bleach it like 4 times to get it this colour, so my scalp looks like hell. So no, I'm going back down to brunette for those of you who are invested in these things. So.
How do you feel about the wage gap between males and females?
Well, I think that the wage gap, like rape culture, is, as I said in my sign at the Slut Walk in Los Angeles last year, it's fantasy. And I try not to spend too much of my life talking about make-believe, because I'm no longer a child. Now, I know that young girls like to play with unicorns and pretend that they're princesses, but unfortunately a lot of women have grown up still believing in myths and fantasy, and one of those is the wage gap. Women aren't paid less than men for the same work. If you add all of the money that men earn and all of the money that women earn and divide them, you get whatever it is, between 70 and 80, depending on whose bullshit maths you believe, 70 and 80 cents on the dollar, but that's earnings, not wages. It doesn't take into account the different life choices women make. It doesn't take into account babies. It doesn't take into account the fact that women have these biological needs to be out in the workforce for a while. And it doesn't take into account any of the other things that mitigate it. So, I mean, you take into account all the different choices women make. And by the way, there is no sort of like patriarchal superstructure keeping women out of science. Because if you believe that women are being kept out of maths and physics by sexism, you have to explain why they're not being kept out of veterinary science and biology, where they completely dominate. It's bollocks. when you tell women if you want to earn more money, change your major, change to engineering, they get very offended. Again, response is fuck you. If you want a good salary, change your major and change to something that will earn you more money. Very straightforward. Women tend to choose not to, especially, interestingly, in more free, more feminist societies. So you look at Bangladesh, some of the gender splits in science is very often 50-50. You go up to Norway, the US, the UK, the gender split widens dramatically because women, given all the available options, make different choices. It's simply not plausible to suggest that the levels of sexism in America today are so much worse than places in the Middle East under Islam. It's not plausible, it's not true. And when women make these different choices, you account for all this stuff, the supposed wage gap narrows to a couple of percent. And then if you really want to get into it, and economists have to take into all these, take these controls into account, if you really want to get into it, well, men pay a hell of a lot more into the tax system. They pay way more in and they take way less out. So when you start to factor those things in, it turns out actually being a man is more expensive. So, I'm a men's rights activist, I'm not going to bang on about how awful it is to be a man. But it simply isn't true. What we tell women that, after November, whatever date is, you're working for free for the rest of the year, it's lies. And it's told to women to feed a grievance culture, to feed a victimhood culture, to feed a culture that says that you don't have to actually be wronged, you just have to say you were. You don't actually have to have any valid grievances, you just have to say you feel offended or oppressed, and you'll get free stuff. Well, I don't believe in organising the world that way. I prefer to tell the truth about things, and it's scary that it takes, some flamboyant fag from Britain to come over to America and tell you guys, because none of the boys have got the balls to do it. But I understand why they haven't, because you lose your job.
How do you feel about cultural appropriation?
Well, I'll tell you. I'm planning, you'll be excited by this, I'm going to give a lecture on cultural appropriation at a university in California just before Halloween, when crazy colleges like to kick up a fuss about, mariachi costumes. I'm going to give a lecture on cultural appropriation in full Native American headdress. I'm going to look fantastic. I'm going to have the paint, I'm going to have a tomahawk, I'm going to come in and say, how? They call me Milo, but my real name is Sleeps with Black Men. And I'm going to explain why cultural appropriation isn't a form of racism, it's how art works. Throughout history, the innovations, whether it's structural innovations in classical music, artistic influences in painting, or any other kind of cultural influx of people or styles throughout the history of every artistic medium, has always been remixed and reimagined. Picasso did it, Wagner did it, Beethoven did it. To now start to get guilty about this stuff because a liberal has told you that because you have white skin you must somehow be racist, even if you don't know it, even if you you have no awareness. I'm sure you don't think you're racist, but let me tell you all the ways you're actually racist. It's insane, and it's also threatening to culture because you're closing off one of the primary ways that art functions. Cultural appropriation is garbage.
What is your opinion of the WNBA?
Of the what?
The WNBA.
The what?
The Women's National Basketball Association.
Oh, women's sports are so boring. Look, I'm sorry, ladies, but if you're a dissident from China, they give you two options: death or women's football. You can go and you can be subjected to 3 hours of women's football. Most people choose death. What's amazing, though, is the way that liberals will try and foist this stuff on you. They try to force you to pretend you enjoy women's football by kind of guilt-tripping you into it. So that the BBC will say, millions of people are watching the Women's World Cup. Well, yeah, because it's the only fucking thing on. Because you won't let us watch anything else. The whole of BBC Sports is taken up with it, and nobody really likes it. There's biological reasons for this. Women are slower. They're not as good at football. It's biology. Modern feminists don't like that very much. They think everything is socialised, which of course is bollocks too. Women have less upper body strength. They have less stamina. Women's football is measurably slower and more boring. And when you take it up to really physically competitive sports like hockey, it becomes even more pronounced. I think I'm right in saying the women's Olympic hockey team in the US plays high school boys when they're practicing for the Olympics. because they're the best teams. Like, that's like a good level for them to practice at. The women's Olympic hockey team plays high school boys because that's like good Olympics practice for them. Obvious, men and women have different aptitudes. I personally find a lot of these women's sports insufferably dull. The only exception is tennis, but that's just because I like the funny sounds.
Do you prefer Trump or George W. Bush?
Well, I've had a private audience with W last year, and he's very intoxicating. He's very sexy. Like, I can see why people loved him who worked for him. Like, I was sitting there for an hour, and by the end of it, I was just like, he's very magnetic, and he has that sort of magnetism, that sort of aura of charisma that the only two other people that have ever had it that I've spent time with or been in a room with have been Mariah Carey and Margaret Thatcher. And these three people, it's a good pantheon of idols, isn't it? These three people all had that incredible magnetism. However, he did enlarge the size of the state, and was great in Iraq for a while, and, you know, he was a good president and a nice person, but I can't possibly compare him to the glory and majesty that is daddy. You're the one that wants to make Bucknell great again. You gave me this fucking hat.
I'm with you.
It was just in the car.
I think this is a great question. The question says, I'm an actor who is conservative. How does the right win back Hollywood in the culture war? It's become increasingly harder to be an actor.
Yeah, I mean, basically you're fucked. Because if you express your political opinions, you'll be blackballed, you won't get the roles you want, you won't get the sex you want, they won't even tell you the house you want. I mean, I used to live in Beverly Hills, and the way that people, buying houses in certain bits of America is a lot more to do with, it's kind of like, when you have like in America, in your apartment blocks, you have like the Residents Association. They kind of have to okay people before you're allowed to move in. Well, Beverly Hills is a bit like that. And yeah, I mean, conservative opinions in Hollywood, you won't be able to live in any of the best neighborhoods. You will be shunted into like action or villain roles. I would suggest you either change your profession or change your politics. So I suggest you change your profession. Do something else.
Okay. You self-identify as gay, but think lesbianism is a trend. What's the difference between male homosexuality and female homosexuality, and what gives freedom?
Again. Well, I'm not entirely persuaded by lesbianism as a concept. I mean, men have been sleeping with men since 2000 BC, but lesbianism is a relatively modern thing. I mean, if it had been happening, Juvenal would have told us, and he didn't. It wasn't really widespread in society until relatively recently, and I think it was... I mean, look, all sexuality is an element of nature and nurture, right? But women's sexuality in particular is malleable, and we know this from the flawed but interesting Kinsey studies and all the stuff that's happened since. We know that women's sexuality is much more malleable, it's much more fluid. Women can go between men and women in male and female relationships in their lifetime in a way that men generally don't. Which has led me to make jokes about, there not really being any actual lesbians, which I do sort of believe. So Julie Bindel, who I dated, who I debated. Sorry, it's been a very long day. Who I debated in Michigan is a proper lesbian. I mean, you just look at her, you know. She's built like a tank. You just know she's got a weed-boned cardigan. You can smell the cat piss. You just know she's obviously never going to have sex with a man. But I think for a lot of women, there's a degree of sort of, I just need a break, I need a change, I want companionship, I'm not too interested in sex. And a lot of these, and I want to move women away from lesbianism because I care about women and I love women, and I don't want them to be subject to the lesbian obesity crisis. The federal government spent $3 million last year working out why lesbians are all fat. I don't want them to fall foul of the lesbian domestic violence epidemic, something I covered in a column last year, which was sensitively titled "Attack of the Killer Dykes." I don't want lesbians in college to fall foul of. Actually, this is an interesting thing for you. The only real rape epidemic on campus. I mean, I've sort of given you the answer. Can anyone guess what it is? Well, if you look at Department of Justice statistics, women who claim they've been sexually assaulted are vastly disproportionately, they report themselves as lesbians. Well, there are only two explanations for this. One, that
men are going out and seeking lesbians to rape, which seems unlikely to me, or that lesbians are raping each other left, right, and centre, and that the only consent they give each other is co-signing at the Subaru dealership. I like that one. I've used that before, but it's a good one. Always good. There is only one respect in which there may be a problem with sexual consent on campuses, and that is between lesbians. The official statistics show that very clearly. University administrators don't want to know. Feminists don't want to know. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody ever will talk about it because it's politically incorrect. But actually, if there are girls on campus that need help, it might be lesbians.
This one says, how do you not like Hillary?
Because she's an evil robotic criminal. I don't have a problem with people being left-wing, but I'd rather you vote for the crazy old man than the robot. This is why I'm confident about Daddy getting into government. I'm sure he's going to be president because his only two real challenges, Sanders is going to be dead by the election. And Hillary's going to be she's going to be in the penitentiary up the road. He certainly doesn't have any competition from his own side. Cruz is just, he just reeks of pure evil. I mean, you can look at him and it's like, I like all of his policy positions because there's something amphibian about him. I can't deal with it. Rubio is, just some homo from Florida. Who else is that?
I mean, you almost banned me from this event. You almost banned me from this event because I showed up at the airport to pick you up.
He showed up at the airport in a Marco Rubio fleece. And I didn't know what to be offended by more, the fleece or Marco Rubio. I didn't know whether it was the terrible candidate or the synthetic fabric, but we've lost it, I'm happy to say.
All right, let's move on. Was Obama...
He's going to drop out really soon.
What's that?
He's going to drop out really soon.
All right, we'll
You're
talk
going to have to come
about
over to Daddy.
We'll talk about it. Was Obama a good president?
What?
Was Obama a good president?
It was nice that we had a gay president. I felt good about that. And obviously, any black guy in a position of authority, I'm fine. Ideally looming. The problem is, America, I've always admired America because I've always thought it was the sort of highest and most perfect expression of those values that Britain shared so brilliantly across the world. And if you've listened to any of my talks online, I bang on about this all the time, so I'm sorry. But for those of you that haven't, we didn't invent property rights, democracy, freedom of speech, any of those things. Well, I did, I'm Greek. But Britain didn't invent those things, but it probably spread those things around the world more effectively than anyone else. And all the places that Britain has been are the nice places in the world. Canada, well, I can't remember Canada, but Australia, America, even the bits of the Middle East, where women can wear what they want, like Kuwait. Why? Because the British were there. And the places the British has never been, like the rest of the Middle East, generally places you don't want to go. I've always seen America as a sort of highest and most perfect expression of those great values that Britain shared. Under Obama, however, the country is slipping backwards. We're going for socialised healthcare, which is hugely expensive and hurts everyone. Everyone laughed at Palin's death panels thing, which is not wrong. It's an expensive horror show. Socialised healthcare, it's a disaster. And the extent to which this president, and in my own area, I talk a lot obviously about the gender issues, the extent to which this president has, and I think it must be knowingly, this guy must know that 1 in 3 women being assaulted, was it 1 in 4 yesterday? It's going to be, 15 in 3 by 2028. He must know this stuff isn't true. He's smart enough to know that the wage gap isn't true, that it's a sort of asinine trickery with numbers just to get at men. He must know this stuff isn't true, but he repeats it anyway and starts to implement policy based on it. The fact that Title IX came in under an Obama administration, who knows how much he had to do with it. I can't help but come to the conclusion that America has started to slide backwards socially under Obama's tenure. Not least because, as a black president, he has done less than nothing for black people.
And I like to laugh and joke about feminism because I think that ultimately it's run its course, it's served its purpose. We should be very proud of the fact that we now, that we now have a society in which women have equal access to institutions, to education, to the workplace. Most of the world doesn't have that, at least half the world doesn't. We should be proud of that. There's not really much left for feminism to fix. There is stuff left to do on race in America. I don't think Black Lives Matter tactics are the answer, but there is stuff left to do. Black people do still have, there's a case to be answered there, and they are still owed something. But Obama has done less than nothing for those people. Race relations are worse than ever. Black people are in a worse situation than ever. Educational prospects for particularly for poor black women who are fucked in life. If you get born poor, black, and a woman, even in America, things are not going to be great for you. Obama's done nothing for these people. So he's done nothing for any of the touchy-feely causes, any of the social causes, really any of the things, with Guantanamo, whatever. I think America has taken many retrograde steps under his tenure, and I can't in good faith say that he's been anything but a disaster.
Okay. It seems like not enough people in this room did enough research on you before they got here, and I think this question needs to be asked for me to talk more about who you like to call daddy. This question says, who do you like for president? And I'm going to add, why do you like this person for president?
Well, I think Donald Trump is great, and I'll tell you why. There are people who vote for Trump because they agree with his immigration position, particularly people who are worried about wages being shoved down. There's another set of people who like Trump, and the other set of people is me, and it's those mysterious women, Hispanics, highly educated people who somehow vote for Trump, and liberals are like, how can you? That's the most intelligent response they have to it. Well, it's a very simple reason. The current parties are no longer fit for purpose. The Democrat Party is a mess. The Republican Party deserves to be destroyed. It is no longer fit for purpose. It disrespects and betrays its own base. It no longer practices conservative principles in government. It deserves to be ripped in two. If we believe in conservative vision of the world, the Republican Party is not going to get us there. So that plus the fact that I think there's been a realignment in politics in the West in the last 20 years. I think that people no longer primarily identify left and right, or at least that's not the most important thing about somebody when I meet them. When I meet somebody, what I care about is if they want to control how I live or they don't. And authoritarianism versus control what you read, what you say, what you think, what video games you can play, what movies you can watch. I want them to fuck off out of my life. I want them out. And I think Trump, for all of the likelihood that he will have some enlargements in various parts of the state, it's going to take a lot of people to get 11 million immigrants out for a start. For all of the risk that he might be a big statist, I like the idea of Trump at least because he is a gigantic middle finger at an establishment that has failed. The left-wing establishment has failed. The right-wing establishment has failed. The consensus, of the people who rule over us, whether it is university administrators, editors of newspapers, or politicians, they have failed. Their solutions to the problems are not working. They don't care about us. They don't care about voters. They don't really care about anybody outside their own circles. And when even the Republican Party, you've got these Republican strategists, bitching about his own voters as being like anime nerds or whatever the hell it was Rick Wilson said, fuck Rick Wilson. When you've got people beating up on their own honest, decent supporters, people who are good, decent people who have valid concerns about whether it's immigration or radical Islam or whatever, when the Republican establishment is like kind of looking to liberals say, can I say this? Is this okay? Is this sexist? Is this racist? Is this all right? Constantly on the back foot. The Republican Party is just no longer fit for purpose, and the best expression of that is them throwing their support behind Rubio now. It's a last-ditch effort to stop Daddy. Typical. I mean, he's just the Republican Obama. He's done nothing. He's achieved nothing. He looks good and he sounds all right. He's just Republican Obama, and I don't want that government. I want the existing structure of parties to be ripped apart and something new to be imagined, something new to be constructed. And I want disaffected liberals, who are most of my fans actually, and libertarians and classical liberals, and old proper conservatives to join together and form the new libertarian majority. That can only happen when the Democrat Party and the Republican Party history.
are you gay?
To annoy my mother. Well, I've written a column about this, and the column was called "I'm so bored of being gay." I remember distinctly the day when I decided to start bringing home drug dealers and making sure that my mother found them in my bed. And I don't know whether I was particularly sexually attracted to them or whether I was just I really got off on the idea of my mother being horrified. But it sort of stuck, and I'm in a rut now. The problem is when you constantly seek sex that is transgressive, and you can probably tell from like my Twitter and my columns this evening that I like to kind of push the button a little bit, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and whatever. But I like things that are naughty and transgressive, and I like to wind people up a little bit, and I like things that are forbidden. After a while, your sex life becomes very boring, and you have to constantly sort of up the ante. And I now understand, feminists, who are these sex policing feminists who kind of want to control your sex lives. They're secretly all BDSM freaks, right? This is true. I mean, they all desperately want to be choked and tied up and beaten. Every single one I've ever looked into in my reporting career has got like BDSM history. They all love being like brutally dominated at night, and then during the day it's all like, how dare you even look at me? Remarkable pattern. But I sort of get where they're coming from, because when you want to be subjugated and you want that sort of forbidden sex, you have to keep upping the ante. So I find it difficult now to get an erection without a gun to my head, for instance. I do think, though, that now gay people are endlessly mollycoddled in society, sort of pacified and sucked up to. Gay people now, it's almost seen as a mark of moral virtue to be homosexual. I don't know how that happened. I think that I might have to join the only remaining marginalised group, which is straight white males, and become heterosexual for a while.
Are atheists bad people?
No, they're just dumb. I don't mind atheists. I find them entertaining because they're dumb. Stupid is always funny, and I find them incredibly thin-skinned. They're almost as thin-skinned as feminists. So I was giving an interview to Dave Rubin, who's a fun talk show host in California, and I just said, what I love about atheists the most is how thin-skinned and touchy they are. And the first comment under the video is, "How dare you say we're thin-skinned?" They're very, very reliably angry about everything, and they just repeat the same 3 fucking lines from Dawkins. And it's like, I don't think they're bad people. I just feel sorry for them.
Tell us about your first kiss.
I don't really kiss. I don't like it. It's difficult because there's a pillow in the way. I'll tell you if you want to know. I was on a German exchange trip. By the way, I lost my virginity in an interracial fivesome with 2 drag queens. And that wasn't my first kiss, but it was a good V-play story. I might tell something another time. My first kiss was I went on a German exchange to Flensburg in Germany, which is just over the border from Denmark. And I ran away with this boy from the school that we were twinned with. And they found us in a field, smooching, and we didn't even know what to do with each other at that point. But we were just sort of smooching, and then I set fire to the shed because my mum took my international roaming away, so I couldn't go home.
Here's one that just came up. How hot is Ben Carson? And would he be a good president?
The problem is, it's difficult to find anyone sexually attractive who's on that much Ambien. and because I'm the girl, I'd have to do all the work because he just went, you want to fuck? I'd have to do all the work, and sometimes mama needs love too. The only black man I don't want to sleep with, and he's fine, I would, but the only black man I don't want to sleep with are Obama because he's spindly and repugnant, and probably DeRay Mackison from Black Lives Matter because he'd accuse me of rape or something.
What is your opinion on the Black Lives Matter movement?
To raise not harm. It's funny, I guess, he's in a weird position, because he kind of like he likes the fact that he's gay, and he'll tell progressive journalists he's gay because it's like another oppression point for him, but he doesn't make a big deal out of it with the black, with a lot of his black followers, because they don't like it. It's quite funny. Following his Twitter is total schizophrenic. As I said earlier, I think that black people are owed something in this country still. I think there are huge race problems still. I don't think there are gender problems. I think middle-class white women are the most privileged group in the history of our civilization. They have everything. But black people in America, not so much. I don't think that Black Lives Matter, which preaches divisiveness and hatred and bigotry, is the answer. I find it striking that so many of the things that Black Lives Matter want look a lot like what the KKK used to want. Segregated dorms, racial division, amped up rhetoric about the evils of colonialism and white people, or the other way around, whatever. It's striking just how much these hateful race-based movements look like each other in mirror image. And I think it's important for people to realise this is not a movement about equality, it's a black power movement. And to be completely straightforward with you, like most of the kids who support this aren't proper black supremacists, they're just ill-educated. I'm a black supremacist. I actually, and I don't even sleep with white people. I'm a black supremacist, but most of these kids, are just very poorly educated. They've been taught that to identify something about themselves that they can use for grievance and victimhood points. They've been taught to identify something about themselves that will get them free passes. They have been fed pseudo-history. And we didn't need to do that, because most of the history is true, and the real history is horrifying enough. But if you ask these kids, about the black experience and about black history in America, they start coming out with stuff that just never happened. I don't think you need to lie to people to redress past wrongs. But I also don't, although I'm a Catholic, I don't believe in this sort of metaphoric original sin where young white people have got to pay for the sins of their forefathers by prostrating themselves at the altar of Black Lives Matter and saying, "I'm sorry, I'm white." I don't think that's hugely constructive or helpful for anyone. It just stokes bigotry and hatred. It's just another way that the left produces the bigotry it says exists, which very often doesn't in the first place, and then uses what it has produced as justification for its own existence. This Kafkaesque cycle of desperate bigotry creation and advertisement that the left does so much. I think Black Lives Matter and modern feminist movement are the two best examples of that in America today, and they are both poisonous.
If you had to describe yourself as an animal, what would it be and why? And in parentheses, don't be
That's
late.
a terrible question. Who asked that question? Who are you? Oh no, you. Idiot question. Ask another one. No, if I were an animal, no, I know what I would be. Do you know those huge spiders in Australia that look terrifying, look like they're going to kill you, but they're actually they have no venom? So they get banned from everywhere, but then when you touch them, you find out they're lovely. I'd be that.
If you had to choose between Bernie or Hillary, who would you pick?
Who?
Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton?
Oh, well, Bernie all the way. Totally Sanders. I mean, the thing about Daddy and Sanders is that many of the voters are quite ideologically promiscuous. What they hate is the establishment. They hate the kind of late capitalist cartel between politicians and the banks, the sort of intricate symbiosis of late capitalism and nepotism. They hate all that stuff. They just come to different conclusions about it. But they're very easily re-educated to the path of truth and righteousness, which is of course gold glittering White House and marble floors. Yes, wonderful. Imagine the Trump White House. It'd be amazing. I was his press secretary. I'd be an amazing press secretary for Trump. Daddy doesn't feel like talking to you today, so I'm going shopping. Put your questions in the box. See ya. That would be great. I would choose Sanders partly because he would do so much damage to the socialist sort of this resurgent socialist movement, such as it is in America, just by existing, because he's mental. But mostly because we simply cannot have a Clinton in the White House again.
As a Trump supporter, I have been ridiculed and discriminated for my views. How have you dealt with staunch opposition to your political stances, and what are some examples of those oppositions?
I just laugh. I laugh because I walk with the certitude and confidence of cosmic justice. I know that Daddy is the way, the truth, and the light. I know that he's going to win. I know that America is going to be made great again. When you have that confidence, things just bounce off you. I think it takes some practice. I know with interest that universities and even social media networks have been very reluctant to police hatred, death threats of violence against conservatives, and very quick to police conservative humour. I myself was unverified by Twitter because I made too many jokes about feminists. It's sort of like buying a business class ticket for an aeroplane, and when you get on, they tell you to turn right. The food is terrible, and everyone around you is awful. You're walking on the street feeling like a poor person. It was dreadful. They're very quick to police conservatives, very slow to police progressives, because these networks, to Twitter in particular, believe that hatefulness toward conservatives is perfectly justified. Well, there's a reason why this happens. I'll give you a very, very short, simple history lesson. It's easy to be a progressive. It's easy politics, and it's easy principles, because all you ever have to do is give people free stuff, whether or not you know how you're going to pay for it. Tell them that they are victims, and that you love them and believe everything they say. And make them feel good for a couple of years, as long as you're in government. Conservatives take different and often longer and more sensible views about things. We want the same things as liberals do. We want the world to be prosperous and equal and happy. We believe that when everyone has equal access to education, that's good for the market, because we get all the best brains, all those brilliant minds stuck in underprivileged areas because they've got crap schools and they never get to Harvard. Affirmative action isn't the way to do that. You've got to give them better schools. We believe in all the same things, but we just have a different way to get there. Conservatives and even libertarians sometimes have to plot a course which doesn't fit neatly with electoral cycles. And very often they have to make hard decisions which sound more difficult, in some cases even harmless in the short term, but which benefit so many more people in the long run. Being a liberal is easy. All you've got to do is make other people feel good about themselves, and even I can do that. But being a conservative can be difficult, and it's very easy to paint conservatives as hateful, as selfish, self-interested. We're not. We want all the same things. We just have a different way of getting there. And it's been a great triumph of leftist politicking to paint that different vision of how America should work, the proper limits of government, the relationship between the individual and the state, how much autonomy we should have, how much free speech we should have, the extent to which other people should be allowed to interfere in our lives. We have a different view on some of those things. For that to be classified as hateful and bigoted, which is what the left has so successfully done over the last 30 years, is a shame. But it seems to have stuck because, as I was saying, the Republican Party is fucking useless. Conservatives are hopeless. The founder of my site, Andrew Breitbart, understood that politics is downstream from culture. You've got to fix the culture first. You've got to stop giving institutions like this over to liberals and letting them run them into the ground and according to them, make them hotbeds of racism and rape. You've got to stop letting them have complete ideological hegemony in all of the social studies departments, because that affects the way that journalists start to understand the world around them, and they start printing lies. You've got to stop letting the entertainment industry just giving it over to liberals. You've got to fund more, better, different new media sources. Conservatives have been okay at media, but not perfect. It's a shame that conservatives get painted like that, but we have to, because we're not whiny babies like the other side, we can take it. And if they want to call us sexist and misogynists, they call me that every day. You're not, so don't worry about it. Return insistently, politely, and always with a request for the evidence, the facts. What is it that you are basing your opinion on? And if all else fails, the ultimate tool in your arsenal, the thing that you can use that will win, because it always does, because nobody can resist the truth wrapped in a good joke, is ridicule and humour, because the left isn't very good at that. They're good at hectoring and being, clutchingly earnest, and they're good at fainting couch kind of behaviour. They're not very good at being funny. And one of the things that my
recent astronomical success has taught me is that being funny is half the battle.
What was the inspiration behind your dangerous faggot tour name?
Just to wind up liberals. I just put the dangerous faggot tour because I knew, as indeed did happen, that idiot college administrators would start asking for the name of the tour to be censored. So, I mean, even Rush yesterday, Rush Limbaugh was talking about me yesterday on the radio, and he calls my tour the Dangerous Blank Tour, because even he doesn't want to say faggot on the radio. Well, for those heterosexuals in the audience, I'm giving you permission to say faggot. You can say queer, you can say gay. Gay is best used not to describe homosexuals, but best used in its premium sense, which is rubbish, crap, lame, shitty, Hillary supporting immigrant. You hear, conservative. You hear somebody saying something really lame and feelings-based, like I'm offended. The best response to that is stop being gay.
Do you think society has blurred the lines between what is offensive and what is harmful, and what are the implications of that?
Yes, there is no such thing as violent speech. There is no such thing as somebody's safety being threatened by different political opinions. Now, the basis on which the safe space, whatever the idiots are on campus this evening, and the protests, they didn't show up because, of course, the weather is bad. I mean, they're fine on Facebook in the dorms, but when they see it snowing outside, they're like, I don't care about that much. Costed liberal cunts. They don't care about anything enough to get out in front of Facebook. What was the question?
I think I lost it.
I lost it. What was the question?
Do you think society has blurred the lines between what is...
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I had too much coffee. It just makes my brain skittish. We've got this blurring of the lines now between what is offensive, harmful. I'm a free speech fundamentalist. I think that people should be allowed to experience and listen to everything. I think you should be able to read whatever you want. If that's, My Little Pony or Mein Kampf, I don't care. I want you to be able to read everything. I would choose My Little Pony, but whatever. I want you to be able to think about anything and express any opinion you like. When people get censured for that opinion in public, that's the system working as intended sometimes. I want people to be able to watch any movie they want, play any video game they want, read any book they want. I want total and complete cultural freedom. That is not what the left believes. The left wants to control you, wants to control your life, wants to lay down the law about what you can do, and doesn't just disapprove of you, it doesn't just believe that you are problematic, but it also wants to actively ban you from even accessing certain things, because those things could be nebulously harmful in some way they can never explain. Well, there is no respect in which a couple of jokes about lesbians on stage this evening endangers student safety. That's preposterous crap. Some people won't like the jokes. Don't show up. If you don't want to listen to stuff like this, don't come. But you have no right to control what other people can listen to. You have no right to lay down the law on what other people can experience and what other people can enjoy. And so when the left mischaracterizes things that it doesn't like for a variety of bogus and bad reasons, as in some way harmful, the best response is to laugh.
Recently, I saw a video of you holding a sign that said, "Regret is not rape." What do you think qualifies a real rape?
Well, I think it's fairly clear where there is, sexual contact without consent. I think that's very obvious. What has happened, though, it's worth pointing out, particularly on college campuses in particular, you now have these kangaroo courts on campuses, which can, just merely on the preponderance of the evidence, destroy men's reputations. And you can't really blame people for being skeptical about some of this stuff when every single case they hear about turns out to be fake, but of course many of them aren't fake. It doesn't do women any favours at all to lower the burden of proof on serious sexual crimes. And also to do what the left always does, which is widen the definitions of offences. So, I mentioned briefly earlier supply and demand. As Dan Hannan makes this point, I think it's Dan Hannan.
One of my fellow Brits makes the point that the left has a supply and demand problem when it comes to outrages. It has to manufacture them, it has to go in search of them. So you've got liberal journalists in America desperately searching, like calling around everywhere in the Midwest, trying to find one pizzeria that will say, you know what, I'd rather not cater a gay wedding. Yes, guys, we've got one, we've got bigots, we found some bigots. The fact is that most people aren't these days anymore, but this sort of bigotry shopping goes on anyway. And it's so retarded. That's a word you're not supposed to say also, but you know, I do because it's obviously not a slur against people with whatever. It's so stupid. It's completely stupid. Yeah, let's move on.
You said in the conversation with Joe Rogan that you would choose not to be gay if you could, and that everyone should. Can you expand on why this is and answer whether or not you think others can choose their orientation?
Well, so the gay lobby started a big lie in the 80s. Now, the religious right was saying that homosexuality was a sinful lifestyle choice. It was an immoral way to behave, an immoral set of decisions that you were making. It was based on Christian doctrine that, you know, you hate the sin, not the sinner, right? So you can love this person, but what they do is not making God happy. So Christians would say homosexuality is a sinful lifestyle choice. The gay lobby were kind of stumped by this because, of course, according to Christians' own set of values, yeah, it is. There's no way you can go from that, really. So what they did is they kind of came up with this gay gene thing. It's like, wait a minute. What if we're like black people? What if we were born this way and we've got no way to change it? That would make everybody who doesn't like us into the most massive bigots. Let's go with that. So they invented "Born This Way," which is now a cultural trope, even in, a couple of years ago in Lady Gaga's songs. But it's a lie, it's not true. The science suggests that it's a mixture of nature and nurture. Steven Pinker thinks it's mostly nurture. In my own experience, it's certainly mostly nurture. I think when I said on the show, if I could choose not to be gay, I probably would, I meant it because it's more difficult being homosexual. I mean, I get a lot of mileage out of it, but I'd quite like to have kids, and I'm not sure that I want to bring kids up in a gay household because so much of sexual orientation is nurture. I don't want to be responsible for him or her not having the best possible, easiest life. I mean, if we could choose, we would all have our children, heterosexual, if only to give them a happier, better chance in life, a better start, to spare them pain. For myself, like I said, I'm kind of stuck in the rut now. I try it once a year, just to make sure that I still don't like it. I find a willing volunteer, and it's never much fun. I get bored after 10 minutes. I probably would have changed it. If I could take a pill and change it overnight, maybe. Probably not now, because it would be professionally disastrous. I have to wait a few years. What I do want to do though, I do want to do that pray the gay away therapy, just to see if it works. Because lots of people say it works, and lots of people say it doesn't work. And people say it doesn't work, it's always bigoted, hateful, religious, nonsense. But there are just as many people who you will never hear about because the media doesn't want to report on them, who say, yeah, transform my life. I've got a wife and I've got kids and I'm happy now and I wasn't before. There are all kinds of explanations that the left will come up with as just internalized bigotry or whatever. But I'd quite like to try and see.
I want to make an edit to this next question to make it better. It says, who is your celebrity crush? And I'm going to say, you can't say Trump.
Party Daddy.
Can't be Trump.
Oh, God. I like Sofia Vergara. The wife in Modern Family.
Me too.
And I like her husband too, actually. Joe Manganiello is good too. You like her too, yeah. Your girlfriend is here.
I didn't say that.
Now she's here.
Oh, she might like him.
I like Joe Manganiello, her husband, as well. He's basically the perfect man. Who else do I like? Palin's still hot. And, I don't know, Idris Elba, but I don't want him to be Bond. I want him to be Bond. What? Jeb Bush, you mad. Mad. Definitely not Marco Rubio.
We have time for a couple more. Let's see.
We're being told we're going over, so if a burly security guard forcibly removes me from the stage, do get it on YouTube. I'll make sure my sunglasses are on, I'm looking really camp, so the school looks as bad as possible, you know, just sort of hauling this homosexual off stage.
I'm gonna pick wisely here.
No, I forgot my Louis Vuitton.
Do you have any advice for an aspiring journalist?
Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it, because the chances are you're not going to be as witty, talented, good-looking, fashionable, well-connected and successful and humble as me. Chances are you won't share my natural modesty. No, I mean, look, I've got very lucky, despite my obvious natural gifts. And the chances are you won't have those gifts, and even if you do, you probably won't make it. You will never make any money. I only make a lot of money because, you know, I was a property developer before. I made a ton of money, and I have other sources of income, but I couldn't live on a journalist's salary. I certainly couldn't dress like this. So I would advise you to do something else, because you're never going to make money at it. And most people only want to go into journalism to express their own opinions. And frankly, the industry needs a bit less of that, a bit fewer hot takes, and more people who just want to break stories. And by and large, people aren't ready for that sort of life until they get into their 20s, until they get to their late 20s, early 30s. So right now, go do something else.
No, just a few more. How do you feel about women?
How do I feel about
How do you feel about women?
women?
Yes.
I love women. Where would gay men be without women? We love them, you know. We get to tell them what to wear. We get to tell them what's wrong with their relationships. You know, they come to us for advice. We buy them drinks because they're all broke and they hate their boyfriends. You know, it's a great symbiotic relationship. We get company. They get, you know, everything they need to be good women. You know, fashion advice and dating advice, because we understand men and they don't. So it's a very perfect symbiotic relationship. All my best friends are women. They hate everything I say on the subject. No, I mean, look, it's when you like to make jokes about things, and particularly you like to make jokes about things when you know people in the audience are going to be like, how dare you, it's ridiculous, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it because I don't want to look like a prude, but what a bigoted, misogynist bastard. And you combine that with a career that involves exploding feminist myths. It's easy for somebody to paint you as a misogynist. I would urge you, however, to consider me an equal opportunities offender. I am rude about everyone equally. I hate everyone. You know, if I make jokes that aren't to your liking about one particular group, you can just hang around for 20 minutes and I'll make a joke about a group you do like later.
All right, we've almost gone through all the questions. I have, here's a good one. What do you find most attractive in a man?
Money.
Money.
Skin colour, actually. Yeah. No, as long as they're the right race, that's all I don't care. No, I don't know. I always have like one main boyfriend. He's never going to see this, so I can tell you. I have one main boyfriend who can actually like bring in a living. Like they're normally doctors or bankers or something. And then I have like a couple of like sex boyfriends. And the sex boyfriends are, you know, like personal trainers and athletes. And I take them out, and then the proper boyfriend takes me out. So it's complicated. You see, my people have options your people don't have. We're given quite significant license, freed from the institutions. This is why gay marriage is such a shame. My God, who want to settle down with one person? We have license to experiment, to push the boundaries of what could be thought and said, the limits of speech, the limits of comedy, the great sort of innovations of drag culture, pushing taboos. You know, we're allowed to do this stuff and get away with it. If I were heterosexual, I couldn't say half the things I've said on stage, even though they're just, you know, a combination of facts and bad jokes. It's a shame, therefore, that homosexual culture is becoming very conservative, socially conservative, and we're going towards institutions like marriage at precisely the time straight people are running away from them, and straight people should be returning to them. But when I look for partners, I look for somebody who doesn't buy in, doesn't particularly want to settle down with, you know, the car, there's 2 up, 2 down, the kids, the terrible jobs, you know, just the sort of the mundane, sort of humdrum terrible heterosexual existence because I like the fact that gays have been overrepresented in, the arts, philosophy, as inventors, as politicians, as all sorts of things. I think it's partly because we live slightly transgressive lives. We take more drugs than you do, we have more sex than you do, we stay out later than you do, we do all sorts of things that you're not really allowed to do. We bring drug dealers home and let our mothers discover them in our bedrooms. We experiment more with life generally, which is why we're overrepresented in those creative professions. And when I look for a man, I look for somebody who's interested in doing that with me.
Two more.
Sure.
This one says, please ask Milo what his favorite ice cream flavor is. Seriously, I'm serious.
I'm not really allowed ice cream anymore because I'm Greek, and when I hit 30 it starts to show. So I have a trainer now that I take with me on tour, and I eat terrible, terrible shit, like protein shakes. Have you ever had a protein cookie? Has anyone here ever had a protein cookie? Fucking disgusting. Awful. So I'm trying to get into shape at the moment, so I'm not allowed ice cream. When I did like ice cream when I was a kid, I liked mint chocolate chip. And now I think I like anything with caramel in it. You wanted me to say double chocolate, didn't you? No, anything with caramel in it.
Alright, here's the last one. Where does this social justice warrior agenda end?
2016. It ends 2016. This is the year we beat social justice. This is the year it has jumped the shark. It made so many mistakes, so many strategic errors in 2015. Going after Matt Taylor, the hero scientist who landed a probe on a comet, and all that progressives wanted to talk about was a shirt that his female friend made for him that had some cartoon boobs on it. This is the insanity of the left, focusing on ever more tiny minutiae, ever more hysterically. It's a sign of a movement crisis, the sign of a movement has nothing left to fight for. The extent to which they overplay their hand, inventing these grievances like mansplaining, manslamming, manspreading, whilst ignoring genuine abuses against women in the Middle East. They've got nothing to say about radical Islam, but everything to say about some white guy who looked at them too long on the tube, or had his legs spread, or didn't leap out of the way fast enough on the pavement. Fuck those people. And I think the more that the public discovers about social justice, the more the public finds out about feminism and all the awful lies they tell about men, the terrible things they say, the more these social justice warriors will become marginalised and ridiculed, the less people will vote for political candidates who support those positions, and the more people will start to ridicule journalists who uncritically and credulously parrot those fact-free, feelings-based lies. This is the year, I think, when much of this stuff gets totally exploded, and the rise of populist candidates like Daddy show, I think, that people are sick of it.
I just want to thank everybody. Help me thank Milo for coming out tonight. Really appreciate it.
You're off. I'm right. Like when I come talk into my tits.
It's the Men of Bucknell Bright Calendar, party gift for Milo, and he is our newest member. So I got this.